Hey guys, ElectromagneticPidgeon here, and today I'm going to be showing you how anybody who's just left the vault can access every single one of the crafting benches straight out of the vault. Before we get into this video, I'm going to be doing this with a suit of power armor and stuff, and I'm also a level 50 character, so my enemies will be beefed up. However, they scale now, so if you're like level 5 or whatever when you've just stepped out of the vault, or when you're starting out, it's not going to be too much different. So first thing you want to do, you want to set a marker at the White Spring Resort. And what that's gonna help you do is it's just gonna make an easier way to find your way there. So what all you have to do to get to all of the workbenches is you come down here. I know there's like enemies you have to defeat. It's not too difficult. And you make your way down the mountain. Obviously, I can do this a bit faster in power armor, but I will do it the longer way that you would do it normally to show that it doesn't take too long. Obviously there are some enemies. They're level 50 for me, but they'll be like level 2 for somebody who's just starting out. And once you sort of dealt with them, or even you can probably just run past, you can just make your way down the hill. Um, I know you probably won't have too many decent weapons. I know when I started out I was probably doing melee to get through this part. It's not that difficult though. And when you make your way down the mountain over time, after it shouldn't take too long, probably like a minute or two, you can set off for White Springs, the White Spring Resort. And all you really have to do is it'd be faster to just make your way through the map, but if you need some help, you can just follow the river down to Charleston Capital and then take this road up to White Springs. But for the sake of time, I will just be sort of walking along here. Um, you're gonna pass a couple of things. You're gonna pass the Gilman Lumber Mill, the Wixon Homestead. So if there are any enemies, that's probably why they're spawning there. Um, I'm not gonna be taking the sort of more guided route because again, I set a marker, and that's something that anybody can do at any point in the game without, charge. And if you just sort of make your way down there, you can work on just sort of, you can run along, probably loot some of these buildings because you're starting out. It'd probably be pretty useful, although there are scorched around here and stuff. But you should be okay if you're wary. You stay out of fights you're probably gonna lose. You should be alright, and you can make your way to White Spring. I would advise not walking in rivers because without a suit of power armor, you're probably going to get irradiated pretty quickly in water. So I wouldn't advise doing that. Here you might see a sign for the Wayward as well as just the Overseer's campsite. There is a stash box as well as some plans and some places where you can scrap. But it's not going to be too much longer. It's probably going to take like 10, 20 minutes to get there on foot. So it's probably going to take a while, especially because you won't have your endurance as high up. So you won't be able to sprint for as long. But it's definitely possible. I'm going to do it. I'm not going to fast travel. I'll show you the entire thing. Again, you might come across roads. If you're unsure about your abilities to outrun or defeat enemies along your path, you can stick to the roads. There will probably be less enemies. But in my opinion, you should probably be fine if you're smart about what you try to deal with and what you just avoid. You should be okay. Now, obviously, any place you come across, you will probably get a marker for fast travel, so that can be useful. If you Obviously you won't have to do this more than once, because once you get to the White Springs Resort, you can then fast travel to there. Again, enemies they do scale nowadays, so even if you find some enemies, they probably won't be very high level, so you can outrun them or just kill them with whatever loot you pick up along the way. You'll probably at this point have some pipe weaponry and maybe a crowbar or a wooden board. I've never seen that before. I don't know if that's a random occurrence. It could be, it could not be. Not super sure. However, we are getting pretty close. At this point, I'm just about at Summersvale. This is a place where I believe there are a few things you can do. It is a town. It has a fast travel point. At this point, we're just gonna have to cross through the mountains or go around them, and then you'll get to either the White Springs Golf Club or just around the White Springs Resort. Another good thing about going to White Springs, besides the the um, the tables, is that you're gonna get a couple things where you can run through and get some decent XP and weaponry, as well as a station, so that you can sell things and access your stash if you don't have a camp over here. Again, in one of my other videos, I talked about how White Spring is a pretty perfect place to go for a camp. I'll leave a link to that up in the card in the top right. Now, the mountains might be a little difficult because there is some rough climbing to be done. However, it is fine. Take you probably will be fine unless you're having some difficulties walking up, in which case you can always go around it, although it will take some more time. There is fall damage in Fallout, but you shouldn't take fall damage unless you're basically knowing that you're gonna take fall damage when you like jump off a cliff or something. So you should be fine on that front. You're probably not gonna there's not really a climbing system in Fallout 76. You're not gonna like topple over and fall down the hill. You might see some signals in the top left that are coming and going. That's because I'm passing by locations in which there are. We're just about through the mountains, and you can probably see parts of White Spring. This is the fence of White Springs Golf Course, I believe. And now you've basically made it to the back end of White Spring if you followed my lead. There are usually a couple feral ghouls around there, so I'd avoid them if you're pretty low level. However, again, they're not gonna be very high level. You know, it scales now. Back in the day, when enemies didn't scale, you came to White Spring at like level 5, you were dead, dude. It was like level 40, level 50 enemies. It was crazy. Here in the golf club is where you might want to do some runs. There's a lot of enemies that spawn in there, namely feral ghouls. They shouldn't be too easy, but they shouldn't be too difficult. They're not too bad, and all around the town and the houses you can go in and get some feral ghouls there. White Spring is a pretty good place to farm experience because there's so many feral ghouls. Um, Once you've made it to White Springs Resort, if you can get inside the main building, um, from this direction is where I go from it. So at the very entrance, um, actually this might not be. If you get into the resort, basically, if you can get into the big building with doors like these, it might take a second to load because it is kind of a big location. Um, it's a pretty decently large building. There's a couple floors, but most of the floors don't really matter for too much. However, the lowest floor, which we've spawned in on, is pretty important. This floor has couple of quests that you might get, but the most important part is if you go to the Artisan's Corner, you'd actually probably be coming from that direction if you came in from the front. We came in from the back. This robot you can trade with, but this is where you might find all of the tables. So armor benches, weapon benches, tinker's benches, chemistry stations, power armor stands, brewing stations. There's a stash box. There's cooking stations. All of the likes. There's not. I don't think there's. This is all that you're gonna get in terms of stations here. However, it is missing a couple, but this is basically all you're gonna need for a good long while. So yeah, that's how you would access all of the useful stations at pretty much the very beginning of the game. You could come here in around. I spent like 15 minutes coming here, less than 15 minutes, and it was pretty useful. Obviously, it might take around 20 minutes for you because you don't have power armor, and power armor did save a little bit of time um, because I didn't have to go around water bodies because I didn't take radiation. But yeah, that's how you might access all of the stations that you're probably going to need for most of the game here in the White Springs Resort, basically once you've stepped out of the vault. Thank you for watching, and if you found it useful or if you enjoyed, subscribing would be amazing. It's free and it helps out a ton. Bye.